A very good day to all you patriots, and welcome back to Tall Ship Tuesday. I am Captain John Paul Jones, here again with another story from our Young Patriots book. Today's story is entitled William's War by Elizabeth Weiss Volstadt. Now this story is very important to the things that happened during the war. Much of the time neighbours were pitted against neighbours, friends against friends, and this is a story about one young boy who tries to come to terms with that and maybe learns a little bit about forgiveness. William watched the orange flames blaze higher and higher around his family's cabin. Wood crackled as the flames devoured the dry logs until they collapsed in a fiery heap. Sparks showered the yard. The barn burned too, an unnatural brightness lighting up the North Carolina sky. He could hear his mother sobbing as she watched everything they had: benches, table, chairs, bedding, clothing, cooking utensils, and, most important, food, disappear in the raging fire. Although the night was cool, sweat poured from William's body as he shook with fear and fury. "No," he screamed. "No! William! William, wake up! Vi is having another nightmare." He opened his eyes. The fire was gone. He lay safely in bed at his uncle's home. His mother was leaning over him. "It was the fire," William said. "It's always the fire. How could they do that to us? I even recognised Mr. McBride." William couldn't understand how their loyalist neighbours could burn down their farm just because his father supported the rebels. Mr. McBride and Pa used to share supplies before the war started, and 15-year-old Daniel McBride, just a year older than William, had been William's best friend. William couldn't forget Mr. McBride's angry face as he threw a lighted torch onto their barn. Over and over, the fire came back into his dreams, making him relive that terrible night. His mother sat down on the bed that William shared with his little brother Eli, who lay quietly, still deep in sleep. "I don't know, son," she said, her face creased with sadness, "but war does awful things to people. This war of ours for independence has been going on for 5 years now. I pray it ends before there are no civilized folks left, and before it's too late for forgiveness." "It's already too late," William said bitterly. "I'll never forgive those loyalists, not if I live 1,000 years. Oh, William, thee must not harbour such hatred in thy heart." William said nothing. He knew that his mother, born a Quaker, supported the Patriot cause, but she believed that they should look for a peaceful solution. Last year, running through the woods with Daniel, William could agree with her, but no more. All he wanted now was revenge for what the Loyalists, especially Daniel's father, had done to them. William's mother sighed and smoothed the quilt around him. "Try to get some sleep now," she said. "We're safe here in Uncle Thomas's mountains. The war is far away." But that night at dinner, news from Uncle Thomas brought the war closer. "Looks like trouble brewing again," he said to Pa. "Neighbour come by this afternoon. Seems like those British won't let folks live in peace. That Major Ferguson is stirring things up. It's not enough that his loyalist traitors are sitting neighbour against neighbour. Now he's sent word that if we don't stop our opposition to the king, he'll march his armies over the mountains, hang our leaders, and destroy our country with fire and sword." "Them's his very words, I hear, with fire and sword." William's heart almost stopped at the word fire. No, it couldn't happen again. He wouldn't let it. Anger against the loyalist rose in his throat, almost choking him. They had to be stopped. Pa echoed his thoughts. "I hate that man Ferguson. If I found him, he'd not walk away alive." "Thee must not talk like that," Ma protested. "We are to forgive." "Hush," said Pa. "Let others forgive. I'll not watch another farm go up in flames." He turned back to Uncle Thomas. "What do your neighbours say?" "Same as you," Uncle Thomas said. "This has gone far enough. We must keep them away from our homes." Word spread swiftly to the surrounding farms. By the following evening, the mountain men had made their plans. They would join other patriot militiamen to find Ferguson. Then they would destroy him before he and his men could destroy them. Faces were grim around the dinner table as Pa and Uncle Thomas made their plans. "I want to go with you," William said, shoving back his chair to stand up and face the two men. "I've got a rifle and I can shoot. You know I can, Pa. You've always said I'm the best shot in the family." Before his pa could answer, William's mother said, "No, I cannot stop thy father, but thee is still young enough. I'll not have all my men off getting themselves killed." His pa nodded. "Your ma and I don't see eye to eye on this war, but she is right about this. You're too young. You stay here and help your ma and Aunt Sarah with the farm and the younger children." "We don't need looking after," said Eli, sitting up straight. "'Tis no matter," said William's mother, smiling at her young son. "William is staying here." William held back a protest that they weren't being fair. It was his home that had been burnt. He wanted to do something. No, he had to do something. A few days later, in the pre-dawn darkness, William watched his father and uncle ride off. They didn't know it, but he would not be left behind. He had already written a short note to Ma and left it on his pillow. He slipped out of the house and headed to the barn. Clutched tightly in his hands was the rifle. In his breeches pockets was a piece of bread saved from the previous night's dinner. He opened the barn door and led his horse out into the woods. Thank the Lord that he and Pa had been able to save the horses from that burning barn. Now he would follow the men in secret until night, when he would appear at that camp. By then, it would be too late to send them back. It was cool for September, and William pulled his deerskin shirt tightly around him. When the sun was high, he ate his bread and stopped briefly at the stream to drink and water his horse. A startled white-tailed deer leaped for cover. Dry fallen leaves crackled and branches snapped under the horse's hooves. At times, William was sure the men would hear him. Then he would stop and keep very still. Finally, the men stopped to make camp for the night. William waited until he saw a fire blazing and smelled smoked pork cooking. Tying his horse to a tree, he walked into the camp. Suddenly, he was looking at two rifles and they were pointed right at him. "Wait," he said, "I'm a friend. My name's William McNabb. My pa and Uncle Thomas are with you, I swear." The rifles didn't move. William's knees started to tremble and he forgot to breathe. Then he heard his father's voice. "Put down those rifles. Can't you tell a boy when you see one? This is my son William and he's just 14. "Well, I'll be," said one of the men, and he lowered his rifle. "But we can't be too careful." "It ain't too smart to be sneaking up on folks in these parts, boy," said the other. They walked away, leaving William to face his father. "Explain yourself, son," he said, his face clouded with anger. "What are you doing here? I told you to stay at the farm." "I had to come, Pa. The fire, it's eating at me all the time. I have to fight. It's all I can think of." "I should give you a good whipping and send you back," his pa said. He looked at the dark woods. "But I guess you'll be safer with us. You'll have to keep up though. And when we do battle, I'll need your word that you'll stay behind. I owe your mother that. You must swear an oath." "But tell you what," William protested. His anger at loyalists made his voice shake. "You have already disobeyed me once. Now swear your oath." The look on Pa's face told William he would hear no argument. "All right," William said. "I'll swear that I'll stay behind when a battle begins." The next few days were long and hard as they followed Ferguson's army through the Carolina woods. Finally, they learned from spies that Ferguson and his loyalist followers were making a stand on a high ridge called King's Mountain. They joined forces with Colonel William Campbell and his army of 900 men. Despite the rain that fell that October day, William felt only excitement as they hurried toward the ridge. Shortly before 3 o'clock p.m., They arrived, wet and cold, at the foot of King's Mountain. The rain had stopped, but the maple and chestnut trees still showered them with drops. "Remember your oath," said William's father. "You stay down here and help take care of our horses and supplies." The assault started. William could hear the sound of rifles and the whooping of the men as they slowly inched their way up the mountain. 1 hour passed. The whooping stopped, but the gunfire continued. Finally, the guns were still. All William could hear was shouting and cries from the wounded. "What's happening?" he asked one of the men guarding the horses with him. "Don't know, lad. Scouts around and see what you can find out. But don't go far. I'll not have any harm coming to you." William moved slowly through the forest, the tall oak and maple trees still glistening with raindrops. He climbed a little way up the mountain and peered through a clearing, but he couldn't see the plateau above the rise. Suddenly, a figure came flying out to the stand of trees, charging down the mountain toward him. William grabbed his rifle. At last he would be part of the war. "Halt!" he shouted, "or I'll shoot!" The figure stumbled over a fallen log and stopped. William looked at him. He blinked. No, it couldn't be. Daniel McBride, his old friend, stood before him, his torn clothes covered with mud. He was breathing hard, eyes wide with fear. Then he recognized William. "William," he said, "don't shoot. It's me, Daniel, remember?" Some of the fear left his eyes. "I remember all right," William said. "I remember your pa burning down our barn, and now you've joined him. I won't shoot, but I am taking you prisoner." The fear returned to Daniel's eyes. "Please, William, I can't stand this anymore. It's horrible up there. I must get home. Pa's been killed, and so many others. Even Major Ferguson. Your side's won. Ain't that enough?" "No. Why should I care about your getting home? Thanks to your pa and his friends, I don't even have a home." "I'm right sorry about that," Daniel said. "And Ma was too. She liked your ma and your family. Please, just let me go. Ma will need me. I'll head right home. I'm finished with this war." William looked at Daniel's face, heard the pleading in his voice. This was his chance to get revenge. But then he saw himself and Daniel jumping into the river in the summer, hunting together in the fall, throwing snowballs in the winter, helping each other with planting in the spring. And Daniel's mention of William's mother brought back her words about the war. "I pray it ends before there are no civilized folks left, and before it's too late for forgiveness." They were civilized folks, he and his family. His hate and anger slowly dissolved. Daniel had lost his father. That was enough. William wasn't ready to forgive, but he would let Daniel go home. "Go on," he finally said, pointing east with his rifle. Then he shouted, "Wait! Did you see my pa?" "I'm not right sure, but I saw someone that looked mighty like him." The two boys looked at each other once more, and then at William's nod, Daniel slipped into the woods and was gone. William watched him disappear, then set off in the opposite direction. Some day, he thought, when this long war was over, maybe he could go home too, to rebuild the farm, and maybe he could then forgive. He hoped that Daniel was right and that Pa and Uncle Thomas had survived the battle. He quickened his pace. Back at the horses, he would wait for news. Now that certainly is a very intense story, and I do hope that William learned to forgive in the end. There's a lot to think about in that story, but I must now thank you for your time and hope to see you again next Tuesday.